there, the documents are there, because you look there and there they are. If you don't look there, you don't think they're there. You know, you say, well, it's not there, but there are many. These are just proofs, visual proofs that the records are there on those subjects. We might talk about that for a second. Next, please. You got it. Okay, another subject that we just want to touch on very briefly is the stereotype of how Africa was colonized. Now, we've just painted an entirely different picture of West Africa. Now, do you think that the great white hunter stereotype applies? No, it really doesn't. Please invite me back to do a lecture, a presentation rather, on the subject, White Armies, Black Troops. It's one of the most involved presentations that I do, and I love doing it. I've only had like 2 or 3 opportunities to ever do that presentation. And I really like to do it, because most of the illustrations that you find, you remember we talked about the dime store novels, the dime novels, and how they affected literacy here. In Europe, we talked about how they were studying Africa. Most of those materials dealing with the European imagery of Africa and the rest come from the period around the scramble for Africa, come from the 1880s onward. And most of them are of military campaigns. So the visual record in the field of how Africa was colonized is extraordinarily rich. Next, please. I have no sense of how many there are, but there must be tens of thousands of illustrations in that area. Must easily. This is the French army. These guys with the baggy pants. That's the French army. In the siege of a small town called Toubacouta in Upper Gambia as part of the campaign against Mamadou Lamine in the 1880s. Next, please. That's more like how it looked. This is when the army was actually, firing on Toubacouta. And the records say, that they dumped like 30,000 rounds of ammunition into the town of Toubacouta in like 1 hour. It was like a firefight. They dumped all that ammunition, and Mamadou Lamine still got away. Remember, the story of the history of Africa is not always about other people winning. Often it's really about us winning. And struggling until we win again. This, the technique when they met cavalry forces, which they did often, the technique of the square was developed. I have dozens of pictures of squares. And most of them have, I wonder why I put that one in, because most of them have almost all black people in it. This one doesn't. Next, please. I'll show you some more to do. German troops in Cameroon. Next, please. Rene Caillet. Remember we talked about him? When they found out that he was writing in French, they almost killed him. And from that point on, what he did for years, not just a few days, every time he was writing notes, he'd pretend that he was meditating and praying. And he'd be sitting scribbling notes like this, And his journal is 1,000 pages long. It's 1,000 pages. I just finished rereading it a little while ago, and it's very interesting. You read this stuff once, and you get some stuff out, read it again, and it says something entirely different. And it's very fun reading. You know how the stuff here with Boukhaloum and Denham and the Border Cavalry is fun reading? This stuff is fun reading too, because he's really telling you about things that, he's seeing, but he's so innocent and naive about what he's seeing that he paints a fairly accurate picture in many cases. Next, please. Again, one of the areas we didn't, check this out. We just finished spending the last, what time did we get? 3 hours, okay, on a survey of the urban heritage of West Africa. And we haven't even talked about the places where the biggest cities are now. Coastal cities, Lagos, 10 million. Dakar. Have we talked about them? Abidjan, Lomé, Freetown, Accra. See what I'm saying? That's a whole different episode. However, the same principles apply to the development of those cities, historical development of those cities, as applied to the interior cities. The people who built those cities were Africans, not Europeans. Africans built the cities. Europeans built some of the buildings in them. But Africans built the city, and they traditionally had, well, we have a piece in the urban heritage of West Africa on that particular aspect of it that's really pretty quick. And we also talk about the black colonies. We outline the black colonies. The black colonies were two, Sierra Leone and Liberia. Sierra Leone is very interesting. It starts in the American Revolution. And what happened was that more black people fought in the American Revolution for the British than for the Americans, many times more. And for example, there were some groups who, as a part of the treaty signed by the British and Americans to end the American Revolution, there were many thousands of black people who were liberated because they had fought with the British. One single day in Savannah, no, Charleston, the south of North Carolina, South Carolina, more than 5,000 black people were shipped out of American slavery because they had fought for the British and American Revolution. There's a book on that subject which you'll find very interesting. It's called, what is the book called? I'll remember it in a second. The Loyal Blacks. Who's the guy? Anyway, I'll remember that too. It describes how many more black people fought for the British than they did for the Americans. Some of these people ended up founding colonies in Africa. One group that left Charlotte went to Nova Scotia on the promise that they'd be returned to Africa. They stayed in Nova Scotia something like 20 years. Okay, nothing happened. Finally, together with free black people in England and Maroons, who set up their own territories in the islands, their own lands in the islands, together with them, they founded Freetown in Sierra Leone. I lived there 3 years, And Freetown's a very interesting place, but the history of it is, see, we make our history as well as we reflect other people's history. We made that. We made the whole thing happen. Check. Okay, let me run this by you and see what you think about it, okay? The American government abolished the transatlantic, or it illegalized the transatlantic slave trade in 1809. The transatlantic slave trade was illegalized in 1809 because, if you know how the government works, it always takes they're always reactive as opposed to proactive. Okay, and so what happens is that it doesn't, it's like 3 or 4 years after them, it became so unprofitable that they're trying to get rid of the system, basically. Then what happens? Boom. Toussaint Louverture, a black man, a black general, forces Napoleon's troops to fight a war in Haiti which they can't win. To finance it, they sell the United States government the largest tract of land in this country. It's called the Louisiana Purchase. What is the year? 1803. Close enough. It's 1803. Okay. Before 1803, there was no Mississippi. There was no Alabama, no Louisiana. Most of the King Cotton Belt wasn't there as a part of this country. 1810, the cotton gin is invented. You have a combination of newly opened lands for plantation economy and a machine that makes it profitable. What do you need next? Labor. and this is very subjective. I could be completely wrong about this, okay? But I believe that hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of black people came from Africa to the Americas after the invention of the cotton gin to work in the newly opened lands, excuse me, of the Louisiana Purchase. The African historical record supports it. You have, it's a long story, but you have things like Ashanti reaching the coast of Ghana, finally expanding to the coast of Ghana in 1807. On that day, 25,000 Fantis were sent captive into slavery. The record's full of, you see the Fulani Jihad in Nigeria, pressing the Yoruba further south, who pressed other Yoruba further south. The slave trade increases. You see the Messina Caliphate in 1880. See, we got to look to African history to find out why things happen to us. It's not because the white man does it. We have a part in it. You see what I'm saying? It's our history. Okay? So you see the people being pushed to this coast and sold as larger numbers of captives of war. Nobody's keeping accurate records on the people coming in. These people are illegal. But this is where the market is. Do you know, brothers and sisters, in 1859, some guy down in Mobile, Alabama, made a wager that he could still, 1859, that he could still take a ship, go right over to Africa, get slaves, and bring them right back home without being caught. And did. He went to Ghana. Actually, he went to, I think it might have been Dahomey. But he got people who came from northern Ghana in the area of Yendi. Now, these people came over and captured these people, or had them captured. You know about the internal conflicts and things going on, right? We talk about that a lot, and all of, there's a lot of stuff happening, but it's not that hard to understand conceptually. He got these guys and women, brought them over, and slipped them through the defenses, all the way up into the bay, some Mobile Bay, right down there. 1859. These people were free a few years later. They started a town called Afrika Town. You've heard of Afrika Town. There you go. That's an example, late in historical terms, of how millions of black people came over to America. It is no accident that we have so many Africanisms in our culture. Many millions of us have recently come to this country. We haven't been here 400 years. Maybe a few have. If you were white and your parents had been here 400 years, you'd make that the high point of your life. You'd be daughters of the American Revolution. That's not what happened to most of the white immigrants in this country. We came over to this country in waves, and the biggest wave was King Cotton. And it corresponds with African history. So, that's another area that we didn't discuss. Perhaps at another time. It's at least another episode. Okay? I think we only have a couple more, but this depicts the formation of Freetown. Now check this out. In Freetown, another urban center in West Africa. Remember the first shot that we showed of the people in West Africa all in the streets and buying things? That was this place, Freetown. Okay, now, the recaptives, Freetown grew because they used to capture Africans on slave ships before they got back, before they reached the Americas, and resettle them in Freetown. By the thousands. By the thousands, especially in the 1810s, 20s, 30s, and 40s. Okay, next please. Are we done yet?
Back to Mr. Khalil. Go forward. There you go.
Okay, thus the empires and the rest are very complex things. And the more we study African history, we see it as a reflection of complexity rather than simplicity. Next, please. And when you get to brothers, and this is the last slide, when we get to brothers like Kwame Nkrumah, or Sergeant Kwame Nkrumah, you realize it is no mistake that they were able to muster thousands and thousands of earnest supporters and to develop political movements, because the same people who raised their hands saying they were intelligent have intelligent cousins has always been in Africa. That's right. And thank you very much.
Give me the lights in the back, in the back. The lights on the wall.
All right, did everybody enjoy themselves? I know it was kind of long, so you can imagine what it's going to be like when he come back. What topic y'all want him to deal with when he come back?
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Wait now. Well, listen. Okay, you do have this book here on sale, right? This
Yes, we do.
Okay.
May I say one thing? I forgot.
Sure.
We are also taking orders for our other series, you know, our complete series, which has 5 volumes, the 5 issues. The Urban Heritage of West Africa, Timbuktu, Gifts of the Nile Valley, the 100,000 Horsemen of West Africa, and the Black Presence and Lands of the Bible. They should be back from the printers in about 4 to 5 weeks. And we would appreciate the entire, these are $6.95 each. They're not, you know, like extraordinarily expensive. But if you can get, if you want to order a set of 5 as opposed to $34, $35, you can get it for $30 on the pre-order here. And I'd like someone to help if they could with that. Plus, if anyone wants to get, you mind me doing a promotion? If anyone wants to get an autographed copy of this, please tell me, pull out a pen, I'll do it. Okay.
All right. Okay, yes. $6.95.
Yeah.
How many you got?
How many you have?
How many you got? Well, let's look in the box over here.
We sold out of the others, except for the Black Presence, which is last printed. So what we're doing, we're taking orders for 6 weeks to come on the other series. But we have plenty of the Black Presence and the Bible series.
All right, wait a minute. The man is over here. They want the book. Hey, listen, brother, you got a pen in your pocket now? Get over there and start signing the book and collect your money. Listen, I know it's kind of late, and I know some of us here want to go see the Super Bowl and all like that. Some of us don't. Great. So we will not indulge you in the question and answer period this time until we invite him back. Now, I want to get a confirmation from him as to what will the topic be when he do come back.
The destruction of African civilization.
Say what?
Destruction of African civilization.
And the Muslims not only, he's talking about Songhai. Okay, he said the Muslims not only control trade with Asia and Europe, but they, dominate trading activities in the towns and cities through resident merchants. The African people, on the other hand, were generally anti-Islam. This is what he says. He goes on to say, the most famous scholar during the period of Songhai's intellectual flowering was the biographer and lexicographer Ahmed Babo, who is Ahmed Baba. He says, born in 1562. They all wrote in Arabic, just as black Americans all write in English today. Then he goes on, he said, and there's something else that simply had to exist underneath the university system for which there is no record, no account, or even passing reference. Another mistake. Lots of accounts, lots of records, and past, and also reference. To go on with Ahmed Baba, he says,
Do you have a lot of that yellow
yeah. He says, in the Muslim destruction of the Songhai Empire, The main centers of learning, with all their precious libraries and original manuscripts, were destroyed first. I just outlined how even the only one that's documented was 6 years after the fact. For example, he says, the age-old practice of seizing all men of learning and skilled craftsmen for enslavement to service with conquerors. That didn't happen, because there's only one group of one family that was seized. Foremost among those captured and carried off was Ahmed Baba. He goes on, we do not know whether Baba continued to write and publish any more books during the remaining years of his captivity in Morocco. His most famous books were written in Morocco.
Before this book was written, was it a lot of documents?
Yes, there was enough documentation. But, you know, to me it was like he was trying to make a point of the whole invasion theory. It's like a polemic that he was, you know, developing. And that polemic was, you know, the invaders come in and they destroy your libraries, and that's the problem. And he ends up with saying that the white man is the enemy. And that's, you know, an interesting, you know, thing to think about. And it might,
but it's true.
It has some. I mean, look, if you know that 90% of the troops in college, say you're an African teacher, okay, and your land is about to be colonized, and 90% of those troops are black people, or say you're a South African, you know, student, and you're about to get shot by a black soldier, or say you're a black American, African American, you know, during the time of riots, and then rounding your black self up just like everybody else. Now, it's one thing to say, you know, if black people are doing that. See what I'm saying? Black people are just as capable of doing that as white people. And there are some white people, I believe, who are doing it.
No, I don't doubt that. What I'm saying, that naive on that particular view, but I still say that did happen. And we should look at it in more depth, as you said, I agree with that, but it did happen, and those polemic views that you were talking about were very important for a lot of us in the beginning.
You're right.
But now we understand that just as the white man has invaded, the black man has assisted in that invasion. We understand that. So I'm just saying that those 7 points were crucial, I mean, for a kid to understand a particular point and develop that to the point that you are right now. That's what I'm saying, you know.
Okay, but we also in that polemic, instead of saying that the slave trade destroyed Africa, that's the point that I attack in the polemic the most. That really, I mean, in a way, you can see the psychology of that point. Because it's saying like, when we left, it went down. You know, but in reality, when we left, it could, to me, what happened was our leaving prevented West Africa from becoming another Nile Valley civilization in the height of its sciences and achievement.
So it did affect?
Big effect.
That's the reason about Musa Ali. He talks about the Africans with triple heritage.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Nicholas Johnson talks about, and these are Africans.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think that this. Yeah.
And the last most respectable resistance to the Arabs was Kahina, a woman who took after her father was killed, her uncle rather was killed. You see, a lot of Africans.
You're talking about Sarah Mooney and Kahina. Yeah. Okay. I'm not particularly aware of that.
Okay. Well, this is his. Okay. Well, what in African glory that book?
The graph down. It's been a long time since I.
Yeah, I've been saying.
Oh, let me share something with you. Down here are some books that I found pretty valuable in the study that you might want to flip through and look at. I think that might be useful. Let me start signing.
Thank you. Thank you. Be back next week. We're going to have Sister Camille back. Okay. Thank you.
Everybody here.
Research and just continue reading, you know, to bring about what was taught.
My understanding is that most of the Muslims in Africa are Africans and not Arabs. For example, Nigeria, 120 million people, 60% of the population is Muslim. There are 70 million Muslims, Nigerian Muslims. I mean, that doesn't happen by accident.
You know one thing, I know a guy who's a native of Nigeria.
Are you from West Africa? Nigeria. You know, the grandmother who became the grandmother was them.
You see, here's
so, I mean, there is a great deal of documentation that points out, you know, that the Islam spread. There were periods in which the spread of Islam in West Africa in particular were violent. And much of that violence was directed against other Muslims. That's what happened.
Okay, now, all right, now you know you make some places no point.
If you have houses here, Ashantis here, Masis and the Gomas here, for one generation, 2 generations, 3 generations, they began to observe and know each other. And there are people who are attracted to and embrace Islam.
Yeah, but here's what I'm saying to you, conversions were made. Listen, the Africans themselves have volunteered to say, "Oh, build a temple or build a mosque."
Sure they did.
No, not before they came there.
Have you ever read Ibn Battuta?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, do you remember what he says about Islam?
They put one in China.
In
the oldest mosque in the world is in China, right?
In West Africa.
So the Chinese just volunteered to put this mosque here. That's the oldest mosque known today in the world. In
So you're saying that the Arabs do everything?
No.
I think that Islam represents a system,
in the sense that it was evolved by Muhammad and so forth.
No, I believe that all.
But there is no such thing really as Islam, because before that they extracted all religions, as you know, is synthesized. All of them.
What is the central teaching of all religion?
Really, Christianity and Judaism.
No, I mean, what is
one God system?
One God system.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm saying
that Judaism is the same thing. Judaism, Christianity,
right?
That's the same thing.
Right.
So it's nothing but an adaptation. That's all that is.
No, I agree.
I know.
They are the same
it's
thing.
Historical.
They are the same thing, but that is not to say they are nothing.
Only thing I didn't say it wasn't nothing.
The same
But I'm saying it was imposed. That's all I'm saying.